The Dodge Viper was never supposed to exist. Not in the 90s, definitely not in the 2010s. It was loud, crude, violent, and pure. And then just like that, it was gone. But what killed it wasn't a lack of power. It wasn't even a lack of sales. It wasn't even Dodge. It was a world that forgot what driving used to mean. This is the story of the Viper, the most American supercar ever made, and the last car that demanded respect. And here's why it never stood a chance. Welcome back, everyone, to Fowler Garage. Hope you are having a great day. Today, we're going to talk about the Viper, what made it awesome, why it's gone, and the fact that I hope to own one someday. And before we begin, I just want to give a shout out to Ava. You can find her on Instagram at abwpics for the microphone. After watching my last video, she decided that I should have a microphone, so she gave me one this week, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure all of you watching will probably appreciate the way better audio quality. So if you're looking to get photos of your vehicle, she does awesome work. And even if not, just go give her a follow on Instagram. She has some amazing photos. So remember, at abwpics, I'll drop it here on the screen, and let's get into the video. Now let's take a moment to discuss the origin story of the Viper and kind of what really made it special for everyone. It was one of those passion projects that Chrysler started back in the 80s and 90s, and there were some really passionate people behind it who want to make something really special. And of course, it was Carroll Shelby who helped build it, and he's the one who's iconic for making the Cobra. And this car was really special. Has an 8-liter V10 from a Ram truck of all things. No roof, no windows, no traction control. Just 400 horsepower and a fiberglass shell. And you know what? The public loved it, and they still do to this day. And really the reason why is it didn't pretend. It was what it was. It's just something brutal. And the spirit carried all the way through the Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4. More horsepower, a little bit of creature comforts as time went on, but there was always one rule if you owned a Viper, and it was that the car will not save you, you save the car. And that is something that some owners, as you've seen in videos, learned the hard way, while others have, respected the. And then in 2013, out came the Gen 5. This is my personal favorite generation. It is the one that I aspire and dream to own someday. And hopefully I'll be able to attain that, and maybe I'll be able to obtain that through YouTube, and you can all follow along as we make that journey. And the Gen 5 was something that really shouldn't exist in the modern world. In a world of, Huracans and McLarens, a naturally aspirated V10 like monster basically with this huge hood. Like they were just wild carts. For that to come out was super strange, and it's something that I don't think anyone really realized how special they were until they were no longer there. One of my favorite little facts about the Dodge Viper is that it's a hand-built car. A lot of people over the years have liked to compare it to the Corvette, and I get where people do it. It's kind of like the American, high performance, halo car for the brand. But to me, you really can't make that comparison. They make so many Corvettes every year. I think I looked up the statistics at one point. It's like 20 or 30,000 Corvettes a year, depending on the year they're building. They built somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30 to 35,000 Vipers in 30 years. And that really tells you a lot. And they're hand built. They're not just in some outsourced production plant. They're built right in Detroit. They were built at the Connor assembly plant. It was actually humans using tools and taking pride in the cars. And it honestly wasn't just a product in the end, it was a craft. You can really see it when you look at one, when you sit in one, when you hear it idle. You can tell it's something special, not just another mass-produced car. And let's talk about all the carbon fiber on the Gen 5 for a moment. Because for those who don't know, there's so much carbon fiber on that car. The hood, carbon fiber. Roof, carbon fiber. Deck lid, carbon fiber. All the pieces were carefully designed to drop weight and, raise hell really at the end of the day. It wasn't just about power anymore. It became more about precision. And that is really showcased in the later years with the ACR and all the subsequent, special editions that went with that, and some of the lap times and some of the things that were taken with them. There was the group that went to the Nürburgring and won. They are really insane and special machines. Now, let's talk about the question that I know a lot of people had when it went away, is why did this car die? I know a lot of people speculated that it was because of sales, but you know what? It's not ever because sales weren't huge. They didn't build it to be a bestseller. It was really built to be a statement piece. But in 2017, they had to kill it. And honestly, if you want to know why, it was a regulation. In 2018, new airbag side impact regulations came into effect, and in all the statements I've read, it said that Dodge would have to rear engineer the chassis in order to fit the side impact airbags. Because if you ever looked at one or sat in one, like the roof is and like the side pillar like right here next to your head, so there's no real room to fit an airbag there without redesigning the entire car, which they hadn't really done to a large extent, really, even from the 90s. The cars were still very similar and similarly shaped and similarly sized. And when you start looking at a low volume car, does that really make sense for an automaker? And obviously for Dodge at the time, an ordeal that large to redesign a very low volume car in a market. And you got to think in 2017, 2018, the supercar thing wasn't as big as it is today. Like today, McLarens, Lamborghinis everywhere. But if you think back to 2017, 2018, it wasn't the same world we live in today. That's kind of something I'm curious about. Just like if you think about it, like, if the Viper had lasted till 2025, if they had to redesign it, would have it gotten redesigned? I personally would like to think so with the way the market is in supercars today. But I think in 2018, that much does not have made sense for the engineers at Dodge. I want to talk with some for a minute about why the Viper really mattered more now than it ever has. Today every car talks satellites, electric motors boost gas engines, everything's smoother, safer, and somehow cooler. The Viper didn't really care about your comfort. It didn't care about your stats. It asked one thing of you: are you a driver? There will never be another car like it, honestly. I don't think ever. No traction control, no drive modes, no excuses, just you a V10, and very much a thin line between glory and a hospital visit. If you've seen the videos online, you can tell why. There's a lot of videos of people crashing Vipers, and it's honestly sad to see it happen, but it really shows you how much of a beast those cars are and how it's a vehicle you actually have to be safe with. And I think that's why people still talk about it, and why it holds lap records, and that's why it still scares Ferraris, and that's because it was really an honest car. It was something that it didn't pretend to be this big prestigious thing. Like, it was just a monster with a V10 and a driver is really what it was, and that's what made it special. If you've ever seen a Viper in person, you know. If you ever heard one start, you also know. If you have ever driven one, you've been to the other side. They are super special vehicles, and I've driven one, and I can't wait to someday be one of the people who's got one parked in their garage and gets to take it to Cars and Coffee to share with other people. I am very excited for that day. And this is your reminder: legends don't die, they just stop getting built. Long live the Viper. That's my little story on the Dodge Viper. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to watch some more, click like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when I upload a new video. And make sure to drop down below. Did you like the Viper? What do you think of the Viper? And what would you pick instead of the Viper if the Viper's not something you're interested in? And again, thank you to Ava at ABW Picks for the microphone. I will be using it in many more videos. And thanks for watching, everyone.